Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you joined me again to work on our art journals. Today I'm going to show you how to make an art journal from scratch, a very simple one, and one from the dollar store. So here we go. This book I got from the dollar store. It's a drawing pad, but it could easily be converted into an art journal. The paper is fairly thick, so it will have a nice consistency using different mediums. It's 70 pounds, so the higher in pound, the heavier the heavier the paper. So when you're looking at different papers to pick the highest pound that you can find. I'm going to get to that one in a minute, but first I'm going to start by making an art journal from scratch. This is a wallpaper book, and as I mentioned in a previous video, get to your local friendly wallpaper store and see if they have any leftover wallpaper books that they're trying to get rid of. More often than not, they will. The beauty about a wallpaper book is they're big and there's a lot of paper in them. They work really well for adding accents to a journal, making covers, using your Cricut to make die cuts out of them. And you can just tell this one book is so full of all different colors and shapes and patterns. It's really great. So I'm just using an X-Acto knife to cut this first page out. I like the colors the best, so I'm just going to work with that one. And then we can put the big book aside. And the next thing we want to do is cut it to size. And this part is up to you about what size you want. I left this about 6 inches high and about 14 inches wide. And you'll see in a minute that I trim it because it's just too long and I don't have enough paper that's that length once I fold paper. Here I'm creating the spine of the book. So very simply making a crease. This is a bone folder. You could use the edge of a scissors or a pen, but a bone folder is really handy to make nice crisp lines. So there's a demonstration of using the scissors. So again, this is the spine. I'm making about an inch wide, and you just go and flip to the other side and make another crease the size that you actually want the spine. So again, it's about an inch, but you can have it wider or narrower depending on how thick you want your art journal to be. And because this has a really nice feel to it, it's going to be really sturdy for the art journal. We can even paint on the front of it, stick things on it. It'd be really great. So again, this is about 6 inches high. So I want to fill it with paper that's 6 inches or smaller. And then it's about 16 inches. So 8 plus 8 is 16 wide. And that's a bit too wide because most pages I have are 12 by 12. Fold that in half is 6 inches. So I'm just folding the sides in on each end just to create a little bit of a thickness for the inside covers and also to make it not as long of a book. So I don't have the covers, the end and the cover and the back overhanging. So now it's about 14 inches and I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to glue down the flaps. And I'm actually really glad that I did the flaps because, like I said, it was just a nice feel for the front and the back of the book. Made it a little bit chunkier. And you'll see at the end that I'll be adding a eyelet to the book. So this makes that a little bit nicer to have an eyelet there. Makes the paper a bit sturdier. So again, a trusted glue stick is a really great supply to have. And there is the front of our journal. So it's really super easy. If you didn't have a wallpaper book, you could use any paper that you might have, like scrapbooking paper, a magazine, that kind of thing. So now it's time to fill the book. And I just grabbed a bunch of papers from simple printer paper. And I'm cutting this to be 6 inches high. I'm going a little bit under 6 inches because I don't want to stick out on the top and bottom of the book. And once we fold those papers in half, they'll be the perfect width. I don't need to trim the length of those pages at all. And when you're looking at pages to fill your art journal, don't be too picky. This paper here has the punch holes in it because it was from another journal that I ripped the pages out of. But all of that gives a really nice texture to your art journal. And it's nice to have lined paper because you can write in it if you are wanting to use your journal for writing. And if you don't want to use the lines, you can easily paint over or cover those. Scrapbooking paper is always one of my go-tos. Yeah, these ones are nice because they're double-sided. So in the art journal, there will be double-sided pages, just putting a little bit more color without me adding color to my art journal. And that helps with the blank space in your journal. Save every little cut piece that you think that you might reuse. As I said before, I keep all of my scraps, and that goes for those little strips that I cut off of the scrapbooking paper. These little words on the bottom of this pink scrapbooking paper is you can keep that as well. And I actually end up using the words on the cover of this journal that you'll see later. So it's up to you on how thick you want your journal, head over heels. See, that's perfect. Keep that for later. It's up to you on how thick you want your journals. With a 1-inch spine, I wanted mine to be quite thick, but also have enough room so when I fill it, that it won't be overly bulging. And I'm going to do this in one signature. So a signature in a journal just means how many stitches it has, like how many collections of paper it has attached to the spine. So we're just going to have one collection of paper that's attached to the spine, and it's going to be a really simple pamphlet stitch. So here I'm folding it. I could use my bone folder as well to have an extra crisp edges, but a finger works well as if you don't have a bone folder or anything else. And I'm putting these in separate piles because I realized that my scrapbooking paper was 12 by 12 and I cut it slightly under 6, which means my other side of that paper is slightly more than 6, which will hang over the top and bottom of the book, which I don't want. So I'm going to trim that in a minute. And if you have double-sided paper, I would recommend folding one way and then folding one the other way, just for more interest in your art journal. If you don't have scrapbooking paper, you can certainly just use all white paper or all a solid color of paper. You could use pieces of magazines even. And the other thing that you can use is watercolor paper and watercolor pads. So even in that sample that I showed earlier, the drawing pad that I got from the dollar store, you could use paper from there to create your own art journal. And it's a very simple and inexpensive way to get a lot of different collections of paper. So like I mentioned, I just have to trim my pages a little bit because I'm slightly over 6 inches. My paper cutter, as I mentioned before, is one of my go-to tools. I highly recommend a really good paper cutter, and never discard your paper cutter if it stops working. Just get replacement blades. It's a tool that will keep on going, and the blade is the only usable part in that. And I've had that one for years. So now that all the pages are cut, it's just a matter of having fun assembling them into one signature. So one signature or collection of pages. This is the fun part because you can mix and match these pages however you want. You could put all the colored pages together, mix and match some of the pages with the lines on it. And I'm just doing a variety. I'm not really thinking about it too much because I really want the whole art journal to be very organic. This is going to be just a secondary art journal that I'm going to keep. And I think that the colors that I picked also match the front cover of the wallpaper that I picked, those oranges and pinks and whites. So it's kind of worked out really well. So there's my one signature, and it's going to go into this book. And I always check just to make sure everything is good. So as you can see, the pages do not stick up on the top or bottom, and they do not overhang. If you wanted to have them overhang, that's totally fine. And you might want to put little flags on your pages as well, and that would overhang it. But for right now, I think this is great. You could cover the inside, but I kind of like it how it is. I might add some more details to the inside. So next, what we want to do is add the holes to the journal. And to make the holes, I use an awl. An awl, I don't know if I mentioned it, is a good tool to have. If you don't have an awl, you could use a simple push pin. You could use anything sharp that's going to make a hole in your in the spine of the journal. If you're using a thicker uh, material, like if you were recycling an old book, for example, you'd want to make sure that you had a really steady hole punch that you could use to get it through everything. Even here, the awl does punch through all of my paper. I'm just lining up those middle holes with the pages that I had already pre-folded. And then I'll go over and make sure all those punches are right the way through. That would be hard to do with a push pin. You might have to just do a few pages at a time to get that done. But yeah, so it's important to get all your holes lined up in your journal. We're just doing a very simple pamphlet stitch here. And so this is a simple pamphlet stitch that we're going to be doing. I've also included some watercolor paper. I had folded that earlier. So I'm going to just poke those holes at the same location. And you don't have to have these exact, like you could measure these out if you really wanted them like a certain measurement from the top and directly in the middle and the bottom. It's up to you. I really eyeball it, and I think it just looks good when it's kind of free form, but you can certainly measure off all of your holes that you're going to be punching through your paper if that's more your thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can have it completely measured perfectly, and that's totally fine. So I wanted to include the watercolor paper because I just wanted something that was really thick that could hold some really great wet paints and inks. Now I found this really funky string that was the same colors as the watercolor paper, which not the watercolor paper, the wallpaper, which was cool. It's pink and orange. I'm going through just to make sure my holes are thick enough because I picked a really thick needle, and I would not recommend picking a needle as thick as I picked, but I ran with it and finished the book using this really thick needle. So what you want to do is gather your papers together, poke your needle and the thread through the inside middle hole of your journal. And I'm really struggling here because it's such a thick needle. So poke it right through and pull and leave a tail because we're going to be cutting off, tying and cutting off the tail on the inside of the journal. So you want to line everything up and poke it through your cover. And of course, like it gets caught on everything. The one thing it could get caught on, it does, the ruler. So just breathe when things like that happen, and it will all be okay. So now you either want to go through the top or the bottom hole. It doesn't matter which one you go through. Pick one. It's a good idea also to use clips, and I don't know why I didn't use clips, but some binder clips, for example, those alligator clips, you could clip all of your paper to and it wouldn't move, so the holes would be always lined up. I would highly recommend doing that. You could even use paper clips if you wanted. So again, I'm just making sure that the hole is big enough to take the needle, really. Everything else is fine. The thread is fine. So going up through the top hole and back through all of the pages to the middle again. And it's really frustrating when your needle doesn't go through. So just again, breathe. And you might have to take a few pages at a time. That's okay. And like I said earlier, clip your pages together so that doesn't happen. This super chunky needle I'm using, oh my gosh, why'd I pick it? Anyway, we're through. Gets caught again Normally does not do this, but it gets all tangled up. Pull that through. And now what you're going to do is skip the middle hole, and we're going to jump right to the bottom, making sure that the pages are all lined up and the hole is big enough for that big chunky needle. That middle piece of paper that you see that's slightly smaller in width is only going to be secured by the middle hole, and that's totally fine. If you have some papers that are smaller, they don't have to have the securative, all of the stitching. One stitch through the paper will be completely adequate for that. So this is the last stitch coming out through the front of the book. Never pick a thick needle, really. Pick the size of the needle to fit the hole. So that's looking really nice. So that's going to be at the middle of our book, as you would probably guess. And then what we need to do is go back through the middle hole. And this is called a simple pamphlet stitch. It's a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. It's used quite often in bookbinding. It's just a really great, simple way to connect your pages together very securely. You can do a 5-hole pamphlet stitch if you want, but this one works well, especially for this one signature art journal that we're doing. And we're through. That was a long process. And so what we want to make sure of now is that everything is tight. You want to make sure that the outside of the book is tight with the string across the spine. And then you want to make sure that you have one piece of string on each side of the middle string that's connecting the book, the binding that's connected the book. And we're just going to do a simple knot, double knot. And having the string on each side really secures that, that piece of string down and makes your binding really feel secure. So I'm happy with that. It's such a chunky book that it will open up. And this is why I'm going to add a string to the front and have it so you can tie the book with the string just to keep all the pages together. So this is a really nice to have tool. I love it. It's an eyelet tool. It's a hole punch and an eyelet setting punch all in one. So it has 2 different punch sizes. I'm using the big punch size, and this is a simple eyelet, and I'm going to put that into the hole. And then I use this tool to crimp it down, and I over crimp it because I didn't take into account that the wallpaper was thinner than I had thought it was. But you just squeeze it down and it makes the eyelets stay and it's secure. And the reason why I use an eyelet, it's because I don't want the paper to rip. If you didn't have an eyelet setting tool or you didn't have eyelets, you could put some washi tape or some tape around the area that you just wanted to make a hole and punch a hole using a regular hole punch. That would do the trick as well. But you might want to put something like this on your bucket list to get at some point. This is We Are Memory Keepers crocodile punch, I think it's called, something like that. Anyway, I really love it. So there's the book with the tie. And again, the tie is nice because if you add things to it, things aren't going to fall out. So there's the book that we've done. And a quick flip through and you can see how great this book looks. It turned out really well. I ended up putting all the line paper together, the blank paper together, and the colorful paper just interspersed. And I'm really happy with how that turned out. Very simple. Again, you could use scrap paper for this. It's 6 inches high by 14 inches total length. You can do any size book you want. I would recommend doing a book that really relates to you. Size of books really matters. When I'm picking a sketchbook, I really like smaller books. They're not as intimidating to me to fill up a lot of spaces. And looking at the front, I just had those circles just sitting there and they happen to be the same color, which was a pure coincidence. So I thought, why not just add these to the front of the book using the glue pen or glue stick, sorry. Again, you can just make a cover ever so more better by adding another layer to it from other paper or different designs. Maybe you wanted to draw something on the front cover, put your name on the front cover, put the word art journal on the front cover, the date. It's endless, really. I'm just trying to make it a little bit more pretty than just the wallpaper cover. And those were just happened to be lying there. So I hope you're happy with that and you've learned how to make your own book. Next, we're going on to a dollar store purchase book. Now, with this type of book, I'm not going to go into changing the inside right now. What I want you to focus on if you're using a dollar store book is doing something with the front. Wax paper is a great tool to have in your arsenal of things because wax paper helps us keep our work area tidy. And especially when we're doing things in a book, it protects the pages. Gesso, I don't think I mentioned in my previous video, but gesso is a great alternative to white paint. It's cheaper than white paint. It has a really nice matte quality to it. And you can get gesso in white or in clear. I'm going to use white acrylic paint to cover the front of this book, so it's going to look not so boring and more like an art journal rather than a book that I just purchased from the dollar store. There's no right or wrong here, just painting the front of a book. And you don't have to use white. If you wanted to use any color, obviously you can use any color you want. Painting is just one option to this. You could use papers, like you could collage over the front. You don't have to do anything with the front. You could have just left it as it was. But considering we're making art journals, let's get arty and do something with this front boring cover. The idea I was thinking with the white on the top is just a really great base for anything else that we can put over top. And I would recommend picking another color if you're using paints that resonates with you. I like this teal color. I thought that might be kind of nice. My white paint is still damp, so when I'm putting the blue on, it's flowing. There's some discrepancy in the hues of my colors now because I have different weights of the white showing through. And I'm not worried about having that messy top at the top where it has the black strip where the pages are all being held together, the binding of this book. I just thought, it's an art journal and let's just go for it and make it really arty looking. The blue and the white looks really nice, gives it a lot of depth. So I hope you have fun decorating the front of your art journal in preparation for next week's class. We're going to go into decorating pages on your journal, whatever type of journal you've decided to do. Now I'm trying to figure out what to do for the front, and I thought this Bunny and Leaves is kind of cute. This is just a free magazine from my library. But then I thought, okay, this looks good too. Help us grow. And it looks like the perfect width to fit on the bottom of this art journal that I'm creating. Again, the trusty paper cutter, trimming the work to the approximate size. And again, this art journaling doesn't have to be perfect. It's an expression of your art and how you create. And if you create really artistically and perfectly, then that's great. But if you are more of a organic crafter and just glues things on the page and it's a bit more messy looking, and that's totally fine too. I just thought this help us grow. And when you're using things out of magazines, it's fun to transform the words that are already there. And so instead of helps us grow, I thought it would be fun to say helps me grow. And I believe that art journaling does help us grow as people because we can really use it as a way to express ourselves. So I thought this makes sense. And it's all coming together. And trust me, I did not pre-plan this at all. Like, this kind of was how it happened. And the more you do these kinds of things, you'll be amazed that this will happen to you too. Things will just pop out of magazines that you want to cut out, or from a newspaper, or whatever it might be. Maybe you see a quote on Instagram or on Facebook or something that you want to use, because you're working on a page. Definitely, like, add these types of things to your journals. So this is help me grow, and I'm using that as a motivation piece for this journal. And the idea of that is, the more I create in this journal, the more I will grow, because I will be able to create art and do different types of art in this journal, and different types of journaling, and making memories in this book. So I thought it was a really, really nice touch, to be honest, and it just really worked out well. And just using a glue stick to stick it down, nice and easy. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can see that I still have a bit of a QR code on the bottom there. But again, this is an art journal, and it's supposed to be arty. So go make it the top front of your art journal arty. That's your goal for this week. And if you use something from a magazine, make it your own. If you used, you were using shiny paper to a magazine, you might want to use a matte medium or something like that to cover your work with, because it would make it less shiny. But you certainly don't have to do that. I'm just adding the blue just to blend everything in. And but again, I could have just left it as a white border down there with the words. Adding washi tape is also a great way to instantly add some texture and some more art-like appearance to your art journal. Washi tape is usually like a paper-based tape, and easy to rip, and comes in lots of different colors, lots of different patterns, and I love it. I have boxes of it because it just instantly transforms whatever you put it on. Now, the top of it, you could put whatever you wanted on. These are just die cuts that I have. So looking at the color, I thought, okay, maybe this looks good with some flowers, butterflies, and birds with the blue. It's really kind of a spring theme that I have going here with the Help Me Grow even. But if you don't have die cuts, that's okay. You can use scrap paper. You can use more paints. You can use pens to do some writing on the front. So many different options for making your journal your own. And if you make it your own and you identify with what you put on your front cover, the more you're going to want to use your journal and get into art journaling. So this is my scrap pad, and I am just going through it just to see what kind of colors go with it. In the end, I decided to use a stencil. I didn't do a video of that, but I used a stencil, and a very light black outline of the stencil, and it's in the front cover of this video. But this really adds a lot of different layers of paper and some fun elements to a very simple, inexpensive art journal. And because I had the wax paper under there, I didn't get any blue on the first page of my journal, which is always a bonus. So I hope you enjoyed that. Again, these are two ways that you can make your own art journal. Buy a journal, or make your own journal. Have fun creating. Like, share, and subscribe. See you next week.